today I'm going to be talking about the book community and when the book community demotivates us to pick up certain books. So, I think the wonderful thing about the book community is that whether it's through BookTube or Bookstagram or Book Twitter or Goodreads or Book Talk, we find a wonderful community of people who share recommendations, who teach us about different books in the genres, new releases, new and different authors, a diverse array of books. And this can be incredibly motivating to pick up different unique books in different genres. It's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. We can connect with others about books and be part of book discussions. But what happens when the flip side occurs and the same community of people who motivates us to pick up certain books demotivates us to pick up other types of books? So I want to talk about what happens or how that happens. And I think it happens in various ways, both in intentional and unintentional ways. And I think this can be both a good thing and maybe something we need to examine. So first of all, I'll talk about Goodreads because not everybody uses Goodreads, but it is widely used still. And there is a star rating system on Goodreads. Now, I personally don't use the star rating system anymore. I have a whole video on star ratings with my friends Ola from Wild Witch and Brittany from Books with Brittany, and we discuss our three very different perspectives on star ratings. So I'll link that video in case you're curious to learn more. I totally support and respect anybody who wants to use star ratings, but I don't use them any longer for myself because I personally find that for myself, they are very reductive and unreliable. But I know a lot of people do use the star rating system. And not only do they use the star rating system, but they look at the average rating on Goodreads. And so when you look at the average rating on Goodreads for a book, there are a few things to consider. One is how many ratings there are for the book that can affect the average star rating. And two is that, and there are a lot of things actually, but two is that different people have different rating systems, and not everyone uses the same standard rating system that Goodreads advises. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think that there should be a strict way that people should all rate their books or anything. I don't want to get into that discussion, but I just think it's something to consider when you look at the average star rating and let that weigh your decision. Because some people might look at that average star rating and see a book has less than 4-star average rating, and they might decide that that means that the book is not a good book, when in fact, some people, they consider a 3-star rating a good rating. So it's something worth considering is all I'm saying there. And some people do consider that, and they instead will look at people they follow on Goodreads and see what individuals have to say about a specific book. And when that happens, there are a couple of things about that. One is that I do think it's very easy to hear somebody's star rating about a book and not really be able to take in anything else they have to say. So some people might give a book a 3-star rating or a 2-star rating, and that might right away register in the person's head, okay, that's a book I don't want to pick up. But there might be other factors to consider about why that person rated the book the way they did. And the other thing is that some of us aren't always conscious of the variables that affect our experience of a book. So when it comes to individual enjoyment of a book, that mood can play a role, timing can play a role, experience with that type of genre can play a role. There are a lot of factors that can affect somebody's experience of a book. So just because somebody doesn't like a book doesn't mean that you're not going to like a book, even if you align on certain views with various books. I have found that to be the case for me personally. There are a lot of people that I love and respect in this community, and I haven't found one single person in this community who is aligned with me in their taste on every single book that they've liked or that I've liked. And in fact, I was part of a wonderful discussion over on Joanna Sousa's channel with Jimmy from the Fantasy Network and Jessie, the Bookish Mom, in which we discussed why we don't recommend books to everyone, why we are very careful about our book recommendations. And just because I love a book doesn't mean you'll love a book. Just because I don't love a book doesn't mean you won't love a book. And I think it's very important to consider those differences. Now, sometimes this can be a very good thing, like as far as knowing specifics. So, for example, some people may know that they don't like specific tropes, and that might be a good way to narrow down knowing whether they won't want to pick up a book. For example, some people don't like the chosen one trope, or they don't like love triangles. And so those things are good reasons not to pick up a book, or they don't want to pick up a book that's a middle grade urban fantasy or a paranormal romance. And it's understandable. I think that those are very valid reasons not to pick up a book, or knowing that those things, those genres or tropes don't appeal to you. Very understandable. And I think that can be a good way to narrow down whether you want to pick up a book or not. But other times, if it just comes down to whether somebody enjoyed a book or not, that's something to call into question. And even when it comes to things like descriptions such as pacing, some people will say, oh, the book was so slow, and they will mean it as a bad thing. They will consider it a slog, for example. And I think that can just vary across the board. Some people might like a slow burn, or you might find you enjoy that more than others, or find it faster paced than the other person. Or somebody describes something very fast paced, and you might find that it doesn't quite breathe as much as you would like it to. And same with plot twists. Some people can predict plot twists way better than others. I am one of those people, I cannot predict plot twists very well. So I'm not very good when it comes to gauging that for other people or for myself, even. So that's always something to consider when somebody reviews a book and they decide it's not good because it's predictable in that way, or the pacing, or things like that. So those are all things to be very discerning about, in my opinion. The next thing I have to talk about may have to do specifically with booktubers or book reviewers. So this may not affect everyone, but then again, it might affect you if you are influenced by a certain booktuber or reviewer who is not picking up a certain book. And that is when you don't want to pick up a book because someone else picked up the book and they already gave a wonderful, thoughtful, eloquent review, and you feel like you wouldn't have much to contribute to the discussion if you read the book and discussed it. Now, that's a very sad reason not to be motivated to pick up a book, but it happens. It's happened to me before. I have felt like, what do I have to say about this book that hasn't been said before, or said better by so and so? And maybe that will make me less likely to pick up a book, which is kind of silly because listening to a very well spoken review should make you want to pick up a book. And feeling like you don't have much to contribute shouldn't be a demotivator, but unfortunately, I think it can be. So that's something to consider. And I know that doesn't affect everyone, but it can affect some people. And it has affected me a little bit here and there. So I want to be honest about that. And I'm trying not to let that affect me. Another thing I want to talk about, though, has to do with hype waves or with new releases. So a lot of booktubers might want to get in on the hype wave when there's a new release and have something meaningful to say about a book when it's first released, especially if they feel that they have a big audience and they feel a lot of pressure to have a voice in the community, to offer their perspective to others, to let them know whether they recommend a book or not. And I can understand that being a lot of pressure on a booktuber. And that might even be demotivating to pick up a book. I don't know. I personally have strayed away from new releases, and I know that's probably not the best thing for my channel, but I know that that can be a big influence on people. But the other side of this is when the book wave has passed, or the hype wave has passed, and suddenly nobody's talking about that book that everybody was talking about a couple of months ago, and you feel like you're the only one who would be talking about it if you picked it up now. And that could be a huge demotivator because, I mean, obviously we're part of a community because we want to talk and connect with others. And so there can be a fear that you're the only one talking about this book, or nobody wants to hear about it anymore. Everyone's gotten tired of hearing about this book. So those things I think can be demotivators. And I don't think they are demotivators for everyone, but I know that they can be an influence on people. So I just wanted to mention it. And then, kind of related to booktube hype, I think, has to do with series. And of course, this pertains mostly to fantasy and sci fi. And that has to do with whether the booktube community or people in the community do not like the last book in a series. And that might be just one strong voice or a few strong voices, and not everyone, but that can be a huge demotivator to pick up the series if you hear that the last book doesn't land for a lot of people. And again, I just want to say that just because some people feel that way doesn't mean that you're going to feel that way. And it's very hard to be discerning about that, especially when it comes to a later book in a series, because Sometimes you can't explain why that's the case without spoilers. But I think that can affect us. And I think we can all influence each other in ways we don't even realize, we're not even conscious of. So I think this is just such an important discussion to have. And I think it's just important to be discerning about these things, or at least be aware of these things. So I would love to hear from you. Do any of these things demotivate you to pick up books? Or do you find that anybody has any influence on you regarding anything I shared? I'd love to hear from you. Again, I don't think this is always a bad thing. I think sometimes knowing going into a book that a book it has a certain type of format or trope or whatever might make it clear that this is a book you don't want to pick up. Um, I will have a separate discussion at some point about DNFing, but I'm somebody who doesn't like to DNF books, and for that reason, I do like to be very careful about the books I pick up. So I guess I do allow myself to be influenced to a large degree on what others say. But I think it is important to be careful about that because you never know if your favorite book of all time could be a book that not everyone loves. Maybe you're the only one who will love it. Who knows? But maybe you'll never know if you just follow what the masses say. Again, these are just my thoughts on this right now, but I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. Please let me know if any of these things are an influence on you not being motivated to pick up a book. And thanks again for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.